Hello, everyone, and welcome again to an episode of Unfound Now. This is where I take a look at recent disappearances, one disappearance per episode. I am, of course, Unfound's host, Ed Denzel. For late September, early October of 2025, I'm going to take a look at the July 15th, 2025 disappearance of Richard Cleaves, Cleaves. He is 62 years old. He's a white guy, and he went missing from let's just say his van was found in a place called Valley View in Nevada. I will get into that in the map section of how I was originally a little confused by that. But his van was found on July 15th, 2025. He was going out to seemingly help somebody a couple hours away that had gotten stuck in some sand dunes. Never made it there, and then his van was found 2 hours away, although the van was pointed in that direction. Like I said, we'll go over that in the map section. As with all of these Unfound Nows that I've done for over 5 years now, I always bring some points, educational points, things I think that we can learn from each disappearance that is featured on every episode. For today, number one is on any given day. Number two is words mean things. And number three, the unknowns of unknowns. So now I'm going to go to the map here on YouTube. It's a video, so I hope you'll watch it. And I will explain why I was a little confused. I will show you where his van was found, where he was headed, and show how far it is from Las Vegas. And then I will come back and expound on those three learning points for, once again, the disappearance of Richard Cleaves, 62 years old, white guy, went missing from the Valley View area of Nevada on July 15th of 2025. And you should know there is not a ton of information out there about him, but he's the missing person I picked for this month. Let's take a look at that map. Okay, let's take a look at this map. And I have to admit, originally when I was reading up on Richard's disappearance, and there's really not a ton out there. But when I was reading about it and I listened to a video, watched a video from Las Vegas TV station about all of this, when they were talking about Valley View and 95, well, there is a road. I remember that I used to live in Las Vegas and know all the streets fairly well, even though I haven't been there in 14 years. But in fact, as I'm recording this is exactly 14 years today since I arrived in Florida. Wow. Okay. I'm just realizing that right now. But there is an intersection in Las Vegas. There is a boulevard called Valley View, and it does intersect with I-95 or Route 95, or they just call it the 95 in Las Vegas. But that's way down in actually the city of Las Vegas. And it took me a while to figure out, that's not what, that's what they meant. I misunderstood where this reporter was trying to explain where Richard's vehicle was eventually found. And in fact, so we're looking at this map, and I needed to say that because what I'm going to show you right now, there is a place called Valley View in Nevada. And I will tell you, I don't know anything about this part of Nevada. For the most part, I really just stuck in Clark County, which is Las Vegas, 99.999% of the time that I live there. But Valley View is way out here north of Las Vegas. Las Vegas is, down here. And Valley View's, I don't know, 3 hours away, kind of northwest of Las Vegas. Well, this is what they're talking about in the article and what allegedly happened was that it's around 6 a.m. He got a call that somebody he knew was stuck at this place called the Big Dune Recreational Area, which is down here where this blue line ends near Armagosa Valley. And Richard lived up here somewhere. As you can tell, it's pretty desolate up here. And for some reason, his van was eventually found right here. So if you see anything regarding his disappearance, it's not Valley View, the boulevard in Las Vegas that intersects with the 95. That's not where his van was found. It was found out here in the middle of nowhere, where the 95, which is this blue line right here, intersects with this place that is called Valley View. An actual place, not an actual street, but an actual place. And so this is where his van was found, and it was pointed south. Where he lives, where he was coming from, I don't know. But somebody called him. He left early in the morning, 6 a.m., I guess around sunrise. And this is where he was headed, down this blue line to help this person out who got stuck. And I guess it's easy to imagine you're out in these dunes. It's probably easy to get stuck if you're not watching what you're doing. But seemingly, Richard never made it down here. And instead, his van was found way up here. As you can see what it says here, it's an hour and 58 minutes away. Although the van was pointed in a south direction. And this disappearance, of course, is back in July. Here we are at the end of September, beginning of October, and it is still unsolved. So I needed to explain this to you. That 6 a.m., I'll go through it one more time. 6 a.m., he gets a call. Hey, man, I'm stuck. Can you come help me? Gets in his van, and for some reason, his van was eventually found right here. It's unknown how long it was sitting there and who first found it. There's no information on that at all. All we know is that seemingly he never made it down here, and for some reason, this is where the van was found. So now I'm going to go back to those learning points, going to break this down a little more, and going to tell you some of the things I learned about Mr. Cleaves that is going to shed, I think, a whole lot more light on what we should predict for why he went missing. So let's go to those learning points right now. Okay, the map section is now done. I want to remind all of you, before I go any further, please give this video a thumbs up. Please like it, share it. If you are new to Unfound, if you are just finding this channel, or if you've never heard about the podcast before, please subscribe to this channel. Go to Spotify, iTunes, subscribe, and get your weekly Friday downloads of the episodes. And if you are new to Unfound, you got a lot of listening to do. Lots and lots and lots. Over 9 years of podcasts. I don't even know how many hours or days or months that adds up to in hours or seconds or whatever, but it's a lot. If you're just finding out about myself, Unfound, for the first time, I have been on TV this year. Some people have discovered the podcast even that way. So thumbs up. Like it, share it, subscribe here on YouTube. If you'd like to support what we do here at Unfound, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast and paypal.me/Unfound Podcast. All right, let's now look at the first learning point. Number one is any given day. Doing this job for 9 years, I can surely tell you that, at least hypothetically, anybody can go missing on any day. Whether we have a situation like Jody Husentruth, that was just going to work, yes, a little late, but she was just going to work, got abducted. Kind of along the same lines, Julie Weflin went to do a job toward the end of her workday, and something happened where she also got attacked and abducted. And I don't know if there was anybody anywhere that could have necessarily predicted either of those attacks happening. Those are just a couple of examples. And what you really see after covering 380 disappearances, that how many of them, a lot of people were just living their lives the way they had always lived them, and they went missing. Sometimes caused by themselves, sometimes caused by other people. But don't think that it can't happen to you tomorrow or next week, next year. Of course, I hope it never happens to anybody ever again, but we know it's going to. We just take for granted so much that, for example, of course, with Richard, that, he got called, and I'll get into whether that actually happened or not here in a moment, but he was supposed to go help somebody out there in the big dunes of Nevada, being a good Samaritan, and he went missing, and he is still missing 2.5 months later. We always take for granted whether it's going to the local grocery store or going on a long road trip. Like for me, I drive to see my dad in Pennsylvania. We just always take for granted, hey, we're going to get there. But we have to remember that people get into wrecks, people get carjacked, people, as we've learned, going on long trips. How many unfound nows have I done where people are going on trips, moving from one state to another, go missing, and they're found near their cars dead, and there's no reason to believe there was any foul play. That's why number one is any given day. Number two is words mean things. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, if you've gone to NamUs enough, maybe you've never been to NamUs before. If not, you should go there and see the list of disappearances there. There's, 23,000, 24,000, 25,000 unsolved disappearances listed there right now. If you're not familiar with that database, you should be. You should go there and pick out a state, pick out an age range, pick out an ethnicity, pick out some dates, whatever it takes. Just mix and match. If you're going to get to know disappearances, you need to be familiar with the NamUs site. But you should also understand that the NamUs site, when it comes to the descriptions of the disappearances there, usually pretty short, usually pretty bland, non-sensational. And we do have to remember that for the most part, that information has been put there by people in law enforcement, and that's probably the reason. But what's interesting about Richards, what caught my eye, and this is why I say words mean things, not on too many NamUs descriptions for the disappearance. It's not the description of the person, like the height and weight, but the actual description of the disappearance. Are you going to find the word supposedly? I can tell you, as many times I've been to NamUs, you start to realize these things after a while. The word supposedly is not a word that's used very often. Of course, it's used often, for example, if we want to talk about another database, and that would be the Charlie Project, run by Megan. There's a lot of supposedlys and allegedlys, and this person said something, but there's no proof that was true. There's a lot of that goes on at the Charlie Project, but not on NamUs. But when you see it on NamUs, my idea is you should take that word very, very seriously, those words very seriously. Anything that might cast doubt about the public explanation for the disappearance. And the way it is written on Amos, it's something along the lines of, well, he was called to supposedly go help somebody who got stuck in at this place that I've already described in the map, where these dunes are, this big dune recreation area. I guess you can go up there with ATVs and big trucks and do whatever those kinds of people do. Supposedly, he was going to help somebody. This should tell you a lot. I guess what it's saying is that's what somebody says. That's, in so many words, somebody is saying that that is what Richard was supposed to be doing that morning. But it seems to me also whoever put that in there may be thinking that whoever passed the story along might not be telling the truth. And of course it means that whatever the story is cannot be verified by anybody else. And I will state again, this is not usually something that somebody in law enforcement writes on that site. And so we should view Richard's disappearance through that light, and that's kind of why I said that during the map section of this episode, that, well, yeah, his van was there, and yes, it was pointed in the right direction, but that doesn't mean that Richard put it there. It doesn't mean that this phone call actually happened. It doesn't mean. And that's how one word, just the one word supposedly, should always cause you to read whatever is before and after that and start thinking, well, maybe this isn't exactly what happened. Just one word, no matter how descriptive and everything else. But if you see a word like allegedly, supposedly, you have every right to be doubtful, because words mean things. Let's move on to number 3, and maybe this will explain both learning points 1 and 2. And learning point number 3, to remind you, is the unknowns of the unknowns. Meaning, we can get a description like on NamUs and read a news story about a disappearance, but usually either of those, and even when you go to the Charlie Project and you could have several paragraphs about a disappearance, there still could be a lot of unknowns, and I don't just mean what actually happened to the person, but there could be things about the person's character. What was that person doing in that area? If the person was going to meet some people, who were these people? How did this missing person know these people? There's a lot of other things that are unknown, even if the description of the disappearance is extensive with many paragraphs. And so when it comes to the unknowns of the unknowns, so the unknown is what actually happened to the person, but then there are other unknowns. And so one of the things I do to try to narrow down the amount of unknowns is, and I've done this, I think, for just about all of the, of course, for the people who have been featured on the main podcast, but a lot of times on these Unfound Nows as well. I try to find out, well, this person who went missing, let's find out a little bit more. This person's just a name and an age and a location and an ethnicity. Well, that usually doesn't tell you all you need to know about a person and why that person could have gone missing. You try to narrow down those unknowns. And as I also say, disappearances are about people, not circumstances. So I looked up Richard Cleaves. I didn't even need to see if he had a criminal record. All I had to do was go to newspapers.com and put his name in, and then also do a Google search, and I have found a whole heck of a lot about Richard Cleaves, and maybe this points us in the direction of why he's missing. This is from just this year, May of this year, 2025. Richard Cleaves was charged on May 15th with offense involving stolen property and an offense involving stolen vehicles, both felonies. Back in 2019, Richard got into trouble for digging for buried treasure on this well-known guy in Nevada, last name Binion, digging for treasure that Binion allegedly had somewhere. Richard was on private property trying to dig for this alleged treasure on there. Sounds pretty far-fetched to me, but he did it. It's official news. He actually did that. That's going back to 2019. And then also regarding that same story from 2019, it says the Nye County Sheriff's Office, and Nye County is up where this dune area is. That's where Pahrump is, going up in that northwest direction from Las Vegas. The Nye County Sheriff's Office, and if you were a fan of Art Bell, that's where he did his show from. If you ever heard him say when, of course he's dead now, but when he had his radio show, talking about UFOs and everything, he would always say, coming to you from the kingdom of Nye. That's what he meant. It was Nye County, N-Y-E. The kingdom of Nye was Nye County because he lived in Pahrump. But the Nye County Sheriff's Office says it has arrested 56-year-old Richard Cleaves, so this is back in 2019, for trying to find any buried treasure left behind by Ted Binion at his former property in Pahrump. Cleaves is being charged with burglary, conspiracy to commit grand larceny, and destruction of property. Now, this does not mean that Richard Cleaves deserved to go missing if somebody caused this disappearance. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that Richard Cleaves was a felon, and as we know, usually felons are surrounded by other felons. And this would make it much more likely in this particular disappearance that to cast a lot of doubt as to whether did somebody really call him to go help somebody get dug out of a sand dune? Did that call happen at all? Or is that just a story going back to the word supposedly in the nameless description for this disappearance? See, this is why you have to check things like this. When you see a word like that, you got to dig more. Forgive the pun, given that Cleaves got in trouble for digging. But he's a felon and a repeated felon. And going back at least, 6 years. And I'm going to guess if I were to really, really, really dig, would probably find out that Richard Cleaves has been breaking the law for quite some time. That does not mean somebody should have caused this disappearance. Not at all. But it does help us maybe assess a little better what could have happened here. What are the odds that a guy who's had trouble with the law, stealing vehicles, going on to private property and everything, just up and deserts his vehicle and walks off into the desert of Nevada to die? It seems unlikely. It seems unlikely. In fact, I'm inclined to believe that people like that, their egos are just a little too big to ever kill themselves, commit suicide, or put themselves in a situation where they might have to harm themselves. This is what I've said also about addicts. Addicts do kill themselves by overdosing, but I don't think the rate of suicide for addicts is much different than the rate of suicide for the rest of society. Now, when we get into mental illness, that's certainly probably something else. But I'm not inclined to believe that a lot of criminals just living their lives are just up and commit suicide unless, of course, they're getting chased by police or something like that. So he has a criminal record, and that's learning point number 3, the unknowns of the unknowns. Well, we've exposed some of those unknowns, showing that Richard Cleaves has a criminal record, and that should be put into your calculations for his disappearance. So what is my overall analysis for Richard's disappearance? I'm going to make this prediction. this particular disappearance is far from over. We have to remember it's only, quote unquote, only been 2.5 months. But given that he has a criminal record, he was going to be going like 2 hours to tow somebody out of a sand dune at 6 a.m, which seems a little suspicious to me. And that his van was left out in the middle of nowhere, where really he was not the kind of guy to leave vehicles behind. It sounds like he was the kind to steal vehicles. Supposedly, you put this all together, I would say that this disappearance has foul play written all over it. In fact, I would have to say that it's easily over 50% chance that this is absolutely foul play. And it very well could be, yes, that call happened, but maybe it was some kind of setup, like we've talked about on the main podcast about the art of luring, calling somebody to go somewhere, get them to do something they normally wouldn't do, maybe unexpectedly, and something happens at that location. It's not the most common type of disappearance, but it happens enough that it has to be noted it's statistically significant. And at the very least, I would say about Richard's disappearance, has to be at least one person, if not more, covering something up. I don't know if Richard's family is out there, if they're going to hear this, or the Nye County Sheriff's Office is going to hear this. Maybe, of course, they probably know Richard Cleaves from experience in breaking the law and everything. They probably already suspect it's foul play. Maybe you don't have to be a disappearance expert to know that. But I guess at that point, then maybe I'm just piling on. But this one has foul play written all over it. And that doesn't mean that it's ever going to be solved. But it would not surprise me over the coming months and going into 2026 if he is not found alive or deceased, that more and more information comes out about who called him and what other things were going on. That would not surprise me at all. So that is the disappearance of Richard Cleaves, who went missing on July 15th of 2025, supposedly going to help somebody who was stuck in a big sand dune in Nevada. Richard's van was found abandoned in the tiny little village of Valley View, Nevada, and he has not been seen since. But he is a man with a criminal record, and maybe his fellow criminals had enough of him. That's at least one theory. Thank you all for listening. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and we will do this all again 30 days from now. See ya.